Herb's unmuted. All right, let's go.
Okay, first question of the day, and each of you can take a turn answering this. Looking at how digital and streaming and vinyl records have evolved over the past 20 years, where do you see audio 20 years from now?
Oh boy.
I'll be seeing it from 6 feet under, so it's.
You know, I was just thinking about this because I did a thing with the Philadelphia Audiophile Society, and they asked me that question last. And I am wondering, I mean, you know, it would be interesting to have a show of hands, because Michael, myself, and Herb all write for Stereophile, and Stereophile is mainly, except for Cal, 2-channel audio. It's not video. Nonetheless, how many of us spend how many hours of our week watching videos either on YouTube or Netflix or Amazon or whatever? So I think it will be very interesting to see. I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I've found that like multi-channel processors, for the most part, never equal the sound of a 2-channel DAC. I mean, you don't have, I don't know if we have anything near the equivalent of like DCS or one of the other top digital in multi-channel or in AV. But it would be very interesting if we moved along those lines so that we could have really high quality audio and video at the same time, and they became more integrated and even integrated into the streaming, you know, and integrated into the streaming experience. That's one thought I have.
You got to keep audio and video separate, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I have a good surround sound system to watch movies and listen to some SACDs and surround sound and some Blu-rays and surround sound. But in my 2-channel system, there's no video. It's downstairs, and that's where I spend most of my time. I watch some movies. I watch fewer movies than I used to watch because I prefer to listen to music and drift away into outer space through listening to music. I find watching movies fun, but it's a different experience. It's not nearly as cerebral or as rewarding for me. I just as soon put a record on and turn the lights out, and it takes me to a really great place, and I make up my own movie that's a lot more interesting than most of the movies I see on television. And that's how it is for me. And I don't think 20 years from now it's going to be any different. I think people, just for my young people I talk to, they love getting into records now, kids and headphones, and I don't think it's going to change. I think video's got its values. Maybe in 20 years it'll be virtual, where you'll be part of the movie and you can really let your ego totally go crazy. But I don't think it's going to be any different. I think 2-channel audio will still be the way that most of us enjoy music. You know, especially if you listen to pop music, you don't need surround sound. Surround sound's good for classical music, and I have many recordings that give me that effect upstairs. But you know what? I don't particularly care about it. That's my own position. I don't think it's going to change much in 20 years. Audio will be 2-channel, and it'll be better than it is now, as good as it is now. It keeps getting better. Every time I think we're done with better, or we're just going to hear different, it keeps getting better.
I was wondering if a better question is, of the people that I know who are really book lovers, they tend to be non-audio lovers. They immerse themselves in the written word rather than sonic.
Steve, do you mind if we give Herb a chance to answer the question before you rephrase another question? That was one of the reasons why we decided to mute everybody.
Okay.
Hey, my answer is short, but it's kind of something I've given a lot of thought to. I believe, you know, streaming has changed my life. YouTube, I live for it. I probably spend more time on YouTube than anybody, and I don't have Netflix or any of that. But I believe, and I'm certain of this on some level, just looking at it, that the notion of digital versus analog, digital still seems like Flintstones level, you know, bonk, bonk with the stick kind of technology. And I suspect we're going to be in a post-digital era that will be analog, but it'll be a lot more sophisticated, and it will stream with infinitely greater ease. That's how I'm imagining 20 years from now.
It won't be analog if it's streaming.
No, why not? Why can't you stream an analog signal?
By definition, digital. If it's-
Analog's called FM.
I believe digital is something that's passing.
I don't see how that's possible.
Okay.
Hey, why can't red be blue? Because it's like someone said, FM radio was analog. Even FM radio today is digital, because what they do is they digitize it at the station at low resolution. Then they send it digitally to the transmitter, and then they turn it into analog again, and then they send it out to you. And mostly it's lower than CD resolution, which is the sad truth of the matter.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, well, Herb, you said you've been spending lots of your time on YouTube. And if you spend lots of your time on YouTube, I mean, I don't know how YouTube is when you pay their premium for their premium music and you get better quality. But if you spend lots of time on YouTube, of course, you're going to think that digital is like in the Stone Age in terms of sonically.
You mean I don't listen to digital at home?
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. But you said that you spend most of your time on YouTube. I'm not trying to put words.
I'm saying that streaming
I could never
not
put
going
words-
away, but I think the notion of having to convert it into digital is kind of a primitive concept. And it shows the limitations of their methods, of their broadcast methods.
So when you say digital is in the Stone Age or streaming is in the Stone Age, what you're saying is you mean we're in its infancy, not that the technology is in the Stone Age?
I mean, think about it for a second. Even Michael, think about this. How did that digital get in your house? If it's so damn clever, why does it have to follow an optical cable through the ground into my house?
Well,
A Russian woodpecker could send it out over the whole world without ever having to dig into your ground.
Well, I don't understand that. If analog is so clever, why does it have to be on vinyl? Why does it have to be on a vinyl record, which I think uses petroleum, which is a non-renewable resource, which is screwing up the, and you go on and on. So I don't, your argument doesn't hold water for me.
I don't see
What
how
do
you
you think, Michael?
come into your house streaming. You cannot stream analog. It has to be digital. That's how it gets in. It goes over the internets. That's how it has to go. And streaming sounds very good. Qobuz and Tidal, high res, MQA sounds great. The record sounds better. Even if I was at an event in New York and we streamed the Abbey Road, at high resolution, and then we played the record, which was cut from a high resolution source, the same source, and everybody in the room, and these are half digital people and half analog people, everybody said, "Oh, well, the record sounds much more like real, much better." Why is that? I don't know. But if you should read that, as much as I wish I'd published this myself, but I didn't, on Part-Time Audiophile, many of you know that site. There's an interview with Dave McNair, who's a mastering engineer, very smart guy. He's a vinyl mastering engineer and a digital mastering engineer. And he tries to explain why a record cut from a file will sound better than the file, which seems counterintuitive to many, because they think by cutting a lacquer, by turning something into a record, you're degrading the sound. But he goes into great lengths in explaining why the record can sound better than the file. Really interesting read. I suggest you read that.
Frank Schroeder says the same thing.
Yeah, Frank's a very smart guy. I spent time with Frank in Germany 2 years ago. It was really a good time. And I'm reviewing the table I'm reviewing now that I won't talk about has a 3D selective laser melt arm designed specifically for this turntable, and it will not be used anyplace else. And it's very cool. And it sounds great. It's quite amazing.
What does that mean?
What does what mean?
3D laser.
So they take powdered metal, whether it's titanium or aluminum, and they literally spray it like the way a 3D printing works, but instead of a resin, like a VPI uses a resin, uses metal, which is much better.
Okay.
Are we ready for the next question? We don't like silence.
The next question, I'm amazed that there's silence from the three of you. It just goes to the enormity of the question and the gravitas that you all put into thinking about this as a significant point of inquiry. So somebody said, would you each be willing to share an amusing anecdote about your time at Stereophile, since you are all members of that fraternity?
An amusing story about.
Oh, God.
You go first, man.
Me?
You go, Herb.
I'll go. But maybe some of it, I don't, you know, the first amusing story, I mean, I've probably written it, but I'm sure some of you know it. But when I first started at Stereophile, I got this box and it arrived and I'm like, I had only reviewed maybe 2 or 3 things and I hardly knew John Atkinson. And the box was just like destroyed. It looked like it had been rolled out of the truck and dragged behind it. And it had another reviewer's name on the box. In fact, then I found another label and it had a second reviewer's name, neither of which were mine on the box. And I put this speaker up and I followed the directions really carefully for setup, but it just sounded horrible. And I tried everything. And I contacted the designer of the speaker and he says, it's not close enough to the wall. And I said, it's touching the wall. You have to like cut a hole in the wall so the wires are not outside and it goes in the wall. And I refused to do that. And I couldn't get it to sound right. So I wrote John Atkinson and I said, is this a test? And he writes back and he says, everything's a test. And I knew that I was probably the 3rd reviewer, that this was a hot potato. And I wrote a horrible review, but here's the punchline, the funny part of this story. So after the review comes out, I get this mysterious phone call. And the man on the other side says, I just read your review of this speaker. And I said, okay. And he said, that was my best friend that designed that speaker. And I said, are you mad too? And he says, no. He says, I'm calling you to ask if you will review my speaker. And I said, what's your speaker? And he said, MagnaPen 0.7. And it was Jim Winey. And he said, that guy was my best friend. I said, so why do you want me to review yours? He says, because clearly you tell the truth.
That's great. It's good to tell the truth when you write reviews. If you don't tell the truth, it's useless.
And you'll die.
I think they're looking for a stereophile story as opposed to a personal. You're looking for something.
Stereophile story?
It's a
Herb, you got it. I have a funny story that people in the Bay Area will relate to, but it's not about Stereophile. So Michael, you come up with a funny story first, because I'm working really hard to find my funny story.
Well, I could say that in all my years at Stereophile, we don't. It used to be in the old days. Every once a year, when Larry and John owned the magazine, they would fly everybody to Santa Fe, and we would all get together and spend a couple of days talking and visiting different people's homes. That because Tom Norton was out there, and it was really good to get to know people. But we don't do that anymore. So it's a much more scattered group of people, and we don't really talk amongst ourselves that much, except in emails. And that's about and shows when we go to shows. But even at shows, I've always been kind of an outsider in a lot of ways. Like one year, there was a staff meeting in Las Vegas at a restaurant. And I wasn't invited. It was really weird. And I didn't even know about it. So of course it wasn't a problem for me because I didn't know about it. But I was walking through a hallway. I guess it was, maybe it was by this, where the Sands meets the convention center, that area. And there was a restaurant, and you could see in the restaurant, and there was a long table, and all the Stereophile writers were sitting there having dinner, except me. I didn't even, I just kept walking. I had a dinner appointments elsewhere, but it was weird. It's kind of a weird thing. Doesn't bother me though, because I just do my thing, and we all do our things at this point. It was an interesting experience. It wasn't funny, but it was, I could have been hurt, but I'm not easily hurt.
Well, that's really interesting because, I've covered lots of shows where you've always also attended. And I remember one dinner we had, I can't remember what show because I see the table now, and where you were sitting and you were talking about writing your political column, etc. But a lot of the talk was politics. But I always assume that you're doing your own thing. You're doing your own thing for Analog Planet, that you're not going to be part of the strategy for what rooms we're going to cover because you're going to do your own thing. So I wouldn't, yeah.
Before that, this is before Analog Planet got started. This is, because now, because Analog Planet, I cover shows for Analog Planet and not, and
Right.
I'm on a different budget, which is good. John liked that I wasn't on the same budget. So my room, my hotel room, or whatever else was being paid for by the magazine, by the company, wasn't covered in Stereophile's budget. It opened up more money for them to. It's an interesting situation, but we all.
Well, Michael, did you think you were being deliberately ostracized? And if so, why?
Later, I was told, well, we assumed that you're so popular and you get invited to dinner. We assumed you had dinner plans and didn't need to be invited. But when Tens sold, we were owned by Source Interlink, and then it sold. And one day, and I didn't know about the sale. And one day, all of a sudden, my inbox was, "Hey, heard about the sale. What's the deal? What sale? Oh, you didn't know? No, what sale? Oh, your company just got sold." I was the only one who didn't know about it. And I emailed, I said, "John, did we get sold?" "Oh, Mikey, I forgot to put you on the list." It's like, okay, that's fine. I think that was just a mistake, but I don't take it personally. But it was nice to know that they got sold.
All right, David wanted me to take the next question. So I have a kind of COVID related question, because you're all obviously very tuned into the industry. How do you see COVID, which is kind of forcing us all and forcing everybody to stay at home and nest and buy audio and video equipment? How do you see this changing things? How have you seen it change things now? And do you think that these changes are going to endure in the future? Does it help our industry?
And
Okay, let's.
It was a tremendous boon to our industry. It is, in sales of hi-fi equipment are better than ever right now. And I hear this from every manufacturer that I've spoken to, and I've spoken to a lot of them. People are home and they have nothing to do, and they're saying, "You know what? I'll upgrade my stereo now." Riga is 20% up in sales for turntables since the pandemic. Record sales are through the roof. Chad can't press records fast enough. The Blue Note, they released ballads and A Love Supreme on Impulse. That's part of the Chad's Verve Impulse thing. They sold more. They sold, the first pressing was sold out in 2 weeks. And that pressing, the number of records they pressed, means that they sold more copies last month of those two records than were sold when the records first came out. That's crazy.
Wow.
all over the world, people are buying more audio. Everybody I talk to is doing.
Are they going to be able to make more of those?
Yeah, they're gonna. When Chad can put up. Chad said to me, "Hey man, I could just press Abbey Road and Beatles records all day and nothing else, and I'd be fine. But I've got to take those off the press to do other stuff." I mean, that's what's going on.
So my question is how, I hear different things from different people about what's happening with the dealer network. I'm wondering, I mean, in some cases, there are these dealers or distributors frankly, aren't very good. They treat people with contempt. They're not there for you. And then there are the other dealers who really stand out, who go the extra mile, who cater to people and all of that. Herb and Mikey, do you have any, because I don't, sitting here in Port Townsend, Washington, in a county of 32,000 people, do you have any sense of how dealers are faring around the country and the world?
All retailing is stressed now. I'm sure Leslie could vouch.
Thanks for pointing that out, Michael.
So when Rega's turntable sales are up 20%, are people buying them direct from the net? Where are they buying them?
Well, they're buying from dealers if they have a local dealer that's still there, or they're buying them on the internet if they do it that way. So that's an issue. But I know the dealers that I talk to in New York are struggling. On the other hand, they also have customers calling them and saying, look, I want to upgrade my system. I want to change my turntable. I've been helping dealers by setting up turntables for them. I know it's my trades business, but I've been doing it. I don't do it as a business, but every once in a while, if someone has an SAT arm and they want a new cartridge, I go do that. Things like that.
So the other thing, Herb, do you have anything to contribute to this about your sense?
I don't have much information on that. The only contact I have is with people like Andy Singer or Gideon, and I wouldn't say they're going crazy. Not having live auditions is definitely not a helpful thing.
I mean, okay, two things I'll say. My first concern is this the same? And Michael, I think you could address this. Are younger people buying those turntables? Or are we dealing with the same older people who aren't that affected? I mean, unless they get ill, aren't affected economically by the pandemic because they're retired or because they're working, but their businesses are not affected by the pandemic. They may be the people who are making more money while other people are suffering. Or are we bringing in a younger audience? Okay.
We're bringing in a younger audience, quite obviously, at this point in time. And I get the emails all the time from kids that want to buy a new turntable or buy their first turntable. I get them all the time, but I also get emails from people who want to upgrade their system. And that covers all age groups. And I get more of those emails now than I've ever had. It's amazing.
What's happening at Stereophile? Are they getting more readership from younger viewers? They should run demographics, right? Is it increased? That would be a good sign.
I think that part of the demographics would be on the internet side of things. It would be that as opposed to subscriptions, print magazine subscriptions. But I know the internet's doing very well for the magazine, and a lot comes from the internet.
How are people hearing about you, Michael?
My website, I was told the last time I checked that my unique visitorship is 192,000 unique visitors a month. That's really good.
It's huge.
Huge.
So what was it? Like, what's the trajectory? How's that changed in the last 6 months?
Well, no, because I really try not to do any of that stuff. I just do what I do and see what happens just because I do what I do. But they're happy, very happy with how I'm doing. It's growing. It's been growing, back when they were paying more attention, when the last people owned it, it was like every month you'd hear, oh, your traffic is down, you better do something, but that hasn't been the case for quite some time now. So my traffic is good. And I that's why I don't watch movies. I'm busy down here trying to produce copy and post. Bring in writer, 15-year-old writer. And I'm trying to bring on more young writers. It's just the most fun to have kids who are into vinyl writing for you. It's fun. But, I reviewed some Von Reichert speakers, and they came down here and he said, you know what? Business is in Asia is through the roof. We can't keep up with what's going on in Asia. I hear that from everybody.
Yeah, I hear that from Kalen at Shinyata as well. They can't build product fast enough, literally.
I know MSB, which is an esoteric brand of very expensive stuff. They just built a new factory because they can't keep up.
So I guess the question is this, once we all are able to go out again, is this going to endure? Do you think that, how do we keep this up? How do we keep it going?
May I say something?
Yes.
The disease going and the business is going to flourish.
No, I can't.
Okay, Jason?
So I just did a story. Now, I don't know if it's going to run because Jim wanted something really short and I wrote a lot of words. But if the vaccine were to come, if protocols, etc., the first show, if I can remember correctly, because I don't have it open, might be Montreal if the Canadian government said so with very strict protocols. Then in June would be the show, and I counted between there and Capital Audio Fest, and I included Hong Kong and Munich, and I had the potential of 11 shows between June and the end of the year, and I included Warsaw in there. So if you take out the 3 that are abroad, there are still like 8 shows. So everyone is like, I think, itching to get back. How manufacturers, distributors, and everyone are going to deal with their priorities and which show they're going to, advertise at or show at, I don't know. But there's this, I think that there's a lot of pent up energy, and it'll be very interesting to see. Given that sales, according to Michael, I have no reason to question that, are booming right now, how these shows affect sales. And will they affect sales on maybe on the least expensive stuff as opposed to the more expensive stuff? And because if those shows come back in force, while people have had this manufacturers and distributors have had this no-show experience, if the shows don't pan out for sales, that's just going to change the whole equation. And then the question is the internet going to be the primary way that the audiophile community expands and moves into new generations? And that will be very, very interesting. And it will also be interesting since the 3 of us write for Stereophile. I mean, Michael has certainly found a way to harness that. But whether Stereophile itself will find a way to harness that energy. I mean, Michael's doing videos, doing all of these things. And I'm not sure that's, that the print magazines, even if they have a web presence, have really caught up in the same way.
Yeah.
So I was just being polite and circumspect, Stephen. So it will be very interesting to see the people who own these magazines, if they, get it together. And the only thing I can do as a writer is do what I'm assigned. I can see certain things, but I don't have power. So in that sense, so who knows?
Well, the World's Fairs went away because we no longer need World's Fairs, because you can just fly to any city in the world you want within a certain number of hours. So World's Fairs are useless. Hi-fi shows, auto shows are becoming pretty much useless. They're getting worse and worse every year. Do we need hi-fi shows? That's the question. Are they fun to go to? Yeah. Are they social events? Yeah. Do you really need them for the industry to thrive? I don't know. Now, Munich show is more than just a hi-fi show. The Munich show is where business gets done. It's a business show as much as anything. And the shows that are business shows will need to continue. They're very important. So that's why the Munich show is going to be in September now. That's the plan. The other shows are fun shows. I'm not sure how much gets sold at shows. I don't know, except people who sell at the back door or they sell at the shows. Small manufacturers just getting going. I'm not sure how important that is. Rocky Mountain is a social show. And it is good to get to see stuff. And the dealers do participate in those shows. And that's useful. But as far as the magazines goes, where our web presence is, every magazine is structurally challenged. And every magazine that's in print, every newspaper that's in print has an enhanced web presence. And that's what's key to the future, because I'm not sure how long print of anything is going to be around. As much as I subscribe to the New York Times and I get the Atlantic and I get the New Yorker and I subscribe to print magazines because I think it's important to support them. But you know, we do a lot of business online. A lot of Stereophile's advertising is tied into online advertising. You know, you buy a package, you buy in the magazine, and you buy online, and that's where the future is going. Although we still are fine. Our print business is still pretty good.
Herb,
Yeah, so-
anything you want to add in?
I can't remember the question.
How-
It goes to the head.
I actually have a question if I can ask it, if that helps.
Wait, why don't we let Herb see if he has
Yeah,
something to say about
yeah,
this
we
thing
gotta let Herb do
first?
some talking. Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to harness all of the eyeballs that are on our industry right now. Is Stereophile doing something or thinking about doing something to take advantage of it? And that's where Jason was going. Is what are they doing anything? What should they be doing? It's a great opportunity for our industry.
They do.
I mean, you have to have reach. And the things that I see getting reach, you know, are people on some level. If you take away the print magazine, I see Darko and Gutenberg and Michael Fremer. These people have reach. But if you don't have the power of reach, audio, I think in general, without dealers, without print magazines, you need a group of people that have, you know, that ability to reach a lot of people. You know,
On the web, they're influencers.
right, influencers that people. I mean, the number of people I watch. I mean, everyone knows Steve's my best friend. I watch his videos go up in the morning, and in an hour, he's got 5,000 people watch the damn thing, because that's what they do every damn morning is get up and pour their coffee and click.
Right.
Somehow that looks like, you know, for the short term, at least in the post-COVID world, you know, if magazines don't, and they do it with personalities, you know, it takes more than just content or rewriting press releases to have reach. And I'm not sure, you know, the audio world has prepared for that yet, but it's, you know, things evolve. They just take care of themselves.
So Herb, I got an okay to kind of comment here. I actually write for Absolute Sound, and I completely agree with you and Michael, what you're doing, and also what Steve is doing with, you know, YouTube in terms of reaching people. Reaching over 150,000 people in a high-end audio kind of, you know, area is pretty significant. And Darko reaches a lot of people as well. I listen to him every week whenever he puts something up. He's got, you know, someone who seriously listens to what he has to say, and he's got great content. I think he leads the industry with respect to his production values. And I'm asking myself, why aren't we at Absolute Sound doing the same thing? You know, why aren't we creating video content to reach a broader audience?
I've asked that question myself.
It's an extremely good question.
Well, I mean, the people running, you don't want to say anything bad about your employer, but are they thinking about bringing in maybe some younger people?
Yeah, I'm not saying anything bad about my employer. I'm looking at it from a Kaizen perspective and future growth, and how do we best meet customers' needs, right? Because that's in fact what Herb is talking about, what Michael's talking about, what Jason is talking about, is how do we address a different demographic, younger kids, you know, that don't typically read long form magazines, printed magazines.
Okay, I have my hand up. Leslie, it has
Yes.
nothing to do with young or old. Steve Gutenberg is not young. And Michael is not young. It has to do with having a vision and harnessing existing technologies. It doesn't have to do with age. So it could be done, but when, you know, Michael has certain amount of autonomy because he runs Analog Planet. So he can do things according to his vision. Herb and Steve and I are writers, so we do what we are assigned. We can send in feedback, but then whatever happens, happens.
Can you not create your own YouTube channels, Herb and Jason and Steve?
I want to point out, I don't think this reach that I was referring to is a technological issue or an age issue or even a desire to make it happen. Michael has great reach because he's done this for forever, and he speaks with unbelievable authority, and he's established a following. You could bring in 49 young people that nobody ever heard of, and nobody will care. I mean, it's really, you need people who can reach their authority, and their voice is what reaches. I mean, I have to see what Michael does all the time. And it's not because he's old, it's because he speaks with authority. I have friends who have YouTube channels, I barely can remember to look at them. And they're my good friends. And that's not Steve or Darko.
I've got a 15-year-old writer who speaks with authority, and he's spoken with authority since he was 12. It's insane. But I was lucky to find that kid. So,
Yeah, he's great. He's terrific. You need to find more of them. So
I have a question from one of our members, if it's okay. Stereophile includes measurements in many of its equipment reviews. Should magazines that include measurements in their reviews also publish, perhaps on an annual basis, the personal frequency response measurements of individual reviewers' hearings? Why or why not?
I'll be happy to answer that because I just reviewed a hearing aid. I reviewed 2 hearing aids on my website. I don't know whether any of you read those, but when I said I was going to do this, people said, "Well, you're crazy. You're gonna destroy your career if you're reviewing a hearing aid." I said, "I didn't say I needed a hearing aid. I just want to know what the experience is like to give people who might need a hearing aid to know what that's like." So the first one I did was a very inexpensive one from Zvox people, and I ended up giving it to my mother-in-law who does need a hearing aid, and it's helped her tremendously. Then I was approached by Widex, which is a company in Denmark that makes hearing aids aimed at musicians. And this included a hearing test. And so I said, I'll be happy to do this. And it's a high-end hearing aid that has a delay time between when it gets into the hearing aid and gets to your ear of a half a millisecond. It's extremely short. Whereas most hearing aids have long delay times. It completely screws up phase and it makes it not really usable. So I said, I'll do this. And they said, we'll test your hearing, because I never had a hearing test. And I had my hearing tested. So first of all, I would be stupid to try to tell you that at 73 years old, my hearing is what it was 30 years ago. It's not. I didn't need glasses till I was 40 something. So my hearing is not as good as it was 40 years ago. So I'm still good over 14K, which is good. And, you know, a cymbal hit, the fundamental of a cymbal is 7K. It's not like we're talking about you're not hearing cymbals anymore. But she said to me, she didn't have a graph for me because I had to do this by remote because of COVID-19. But she said, basically, your hearing is still good. You have some moderate loss in the mid-range, which is that's where most hearing losses occur. It's in the mid-range, so it means that you have trouble with voices, or you have trouble the mumbling dialogue in movies. You know, that's where my issue is. But she said your hearing is still pretty good. So, but that doesn't really matter. That measurement is irrelevant, because over time your experience is what teaches you what you're doing. I can review a piece of equipment now in about a quarter of the time I used to be able. I used to not know what I was doing. When my hearing was much better, I didn't know what I was doing. So I had nothing to compare things to. I was like at a loss. Now I put something in, I know pretty quickly what it sounds like, and I can write. At this point, I still think I know what I'm doing, and I'm authoritative. I reviewed the PS Audio Stellar Phono preamp, gave it a rave review. It's a fantastic piece. And everybody that bought one off of the review came back and they said, "You're right, it's fantastic." And most of them are younger than me. At this point, most people are younger than me, so it's not an issue. But I'll know when I'm no longer viable, when what I write doesn't make any sense to people. I don't think how you really is relevant or important.
Okay, I've kind of lost my thoughts, but let me try to pull them together. There are all kinds of implied statements in that question. One is that measurements are absolute, but that a personal evaluation is that measurements are kind of inviolate. They're like the monument. They're granite. And while we are, especially as we age, we are somehow failing. And I have some real questions about that, because first of all, measurements aren't absolute. We know time and time again that things that don't measure real well can still be incredibly pleasing musically. And that we can hear great music in really bad halls, and it still comes off as a great musical experience, even if the hall isn't very good. So I question this whole thing of constantly digging at writers. You're getting older. Let's check your hearing. Let's see if it's worthwhile. And I want to, so I have a personal reaction to that kind of question. I also want to second what Michael said. I've explained this to a few people lately. When I used to attempt to cover every room at a show before the show got too big, and that was an incredibly exhausting experience, I would go into a room and I would kind of get what I wanted to write in 30 seconds. I got it. And I then realized it's impolite for me to leave. So I sit there with a very straight face, as though I'm listening, but I've already got what the system is doing in 30 seconds. And it's a curious thing when we review equipment, because we do different recordings and we do this and that. But I would say at this part, those of us who've been doing it for a while, we get it pretty fast, and we know what tracks to play and we know what to listen for. So that's what I would say. I think what's more important than getting our hearing, I mean, obviously, if I felt that I couldn't hear things in a recording, and that my hearing was getting in the way of me doing a good job, I would do what, quick, my mind just went blank, audio stream, Tile did. And I would just call it quits. But I don't have that sense at all. What I do have a sense of is that my ability, like I watch, my ability to express my experience in words is increasing. I'd like to think, maybe I flatter myself, but I'd like to think that I'm finding better ways and clearer ways to relate my experience verbally for what I hear that is actually beyond words.
That's the most fun of the job, is when you find a way to say something about how something sounds in a different way that you've never done before. That's what makes the writing fun, when you make an analogy that you haven't made before, and it means something. The problem with measurements is that they're misinterpreted all the time. People look at the measurements and they don't know how to interpret them. And when I was up there to visit you last time, and I got to interview Siegfried Linkwitz, he said some really interesting things to me. The most important thing he said was, you use your ears for hearing and you use for eyes for seeing. Don't confuse the two. And so when you look at a measurement, don't think that you can tell from what the measurement looked like that you can tell what something sounds like, because people make so many mistakes about that. I mean, when I logged on to Audiophiles North America, which some of you may visit every once in a while, it's a very toxic Facebook group. They're toxic. The first time I logged in there to say hello, the first comment they gave was, "You're an old man with a shitty room and you're deaf." That's the first thing I was told. And then it became this whole thing about measurements. I've seen the measurements of your room. You haven't been in my room. I don't have to go to your room. I see the measurements. I know what it's. These people are nuts. I had these I may have told this story before. I had these two Russian guys. I met them at Stereo Exchange, and they came into the room. I was doing a turntable setup seminar, and they said, "We don't like turntable, but we come into your room. We see the measurement of your room, boomy bass. How do you put up with that boomy bass in your room?" I said, "My room does not have boomy bass, but we see big bump at 40 hertz. It's terrible." I said, "Why don't you guys come over, bring your CDs and tell me what you hear?" You didn't invite us to your house? Yeah, come on over. So they came over and they sat down and they brought their CDs and they're playing the CDs and they're whispering to each other. And when they were done, the guy says, yeah, you're right, no booming bass. But what about measurement? I said, you cannot see it. What my room sounds like. You have to hear it. Now I want to play you some records. Oh, we don't like records. You're here. I pulled out this record. Anybody know this record? This is like one of the best sounding records I've ever heard, and it's a Porgy and Bess, and it's Lauren Mazzella, Cleveland Orchestra, Kenneth Wilkinson engineered this. It's insanely great. So when Harry Pearson reviewed this, at the beginning they actually throw some dice in the first tune on there, and Harry Pearson's review said, this recording is so great, you can read the numbers on the dot. You can tell what the number is. Just that's what made Harry such a great writer.
Absolutely, man. There it is.
I played this record for these guys, and they kept looking back to make sure I wasn't fooling them. And when it was like, that's a record, but I don't hear pops and clicks. Why don't I? Because that's not what playing records is about. Pops. You think people like pops and clicks? No, records shouldn't have pops and clicks when you play a clean record back properly. We're going to get that on a CD, so we'll tell you. I said, if you get the CD, I guarantee you it will not sound like that record. We'll get CD. So 2 weeks later, the guy calls you. We got CD from Amazon. You're right. Record CD does not sound like that record. Why is that? I said, I don't know, and I don't care. I just know it is.
So I want to read you something from a review of mine that isn't published yet. So I don't know if this will end up in print because it's a long review.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael wants to say something. What?
Tell on you. You can't do that. No, do it, but you shouldn't do that. If it hasn't been published yet, you shouldn't.
Okay, you've told on me. Now I'm going to read this to you. So it's not what I had to say about the sound. It's the manufacturer. So he's talking about his integrated, and he says, actually, it outputs even less than 50 watts without measurable distortion. What's important, however, is not the amount of watts, but how it sounds, how it performs, and how it drives the speaker. Then I'll skip what I had to say. And this is an integrated that's putting out less than 50 watts, and it's with my Wilson Alexia 2s, which are notorious because of their impedance dip in the bass and hard to drive. And I've had at least 2 other pieces of equipment here, maybe 3, 2 of them that have just fallen apart trying to deal with the Wilsons. And he says, there is a big misunderstanding about power. Power is always measured by a constant stable frequency in the lab, a single continuous sine wave without alterations of the level and time. When the major question is how much power an amplifier can deliver instantly, not constantly. Measuring with a stable frequency doesn't tell you much about how an amplifier will handle musical dynamics, follow precisely music's chaotic and complex transients, and drive the speaker. It's a number that doesn't apply in real life. Because it is common for an amplifier of hundreds of watts to be incapable of driving a difficult speaker load, you have to listen to it to see if it will drive the speaker. So there's that whole argument of measurements, and are we measuring the right thing, and are we measuring the right way? So of course I edited that so it reads really well because this man's first language is not English. You know, that's what I would say, and I mean, there's you know, these subjective subjectivist objectivist dichotomies, I find them false. It's like all the polarization that's going on in American society right now. You're either with us or against us, and all of this crap. I just can't get involved in all of it. People can battle to their death. That's fine. I've done plenty of battling in my life, and I'll be doing a lot more before I die, but I want to save some room for other things. So I'm happy to be humble in the face of things that I don't know and I don't understand, and be grateful for the beauty that I can find within this crazy, chaotic universe. And ultimately, that's what brought me to audio, and that's what I hope comes through in my writing, that what I care about is the beauty and the unity and the union that we achieve by listening to a great piece of music. And some of my great and most uniting experiences with other people have been in absolute silence. When we've sat together, this is what I miss, and we've listened to a piece of music, and without words, we've had the exact same experience. And I think that one of our gifts and our charges, I think as a writer, and I think all of us do to various extents, is we're able to communicate that sense of union and oneness through our writing. And this is where I think our strength is as writers. And I've wandered all over the place, but there you have it.
Okay, Herb. Herb.
I'd like to point out that
Jan.
I mean, I always actually, people who ask that question annoy the living shit out of me, because it's like, what the fuck? I mean, listening is a qualitative experience, not a quantitative experience. Me and Roy Hall sat in one room. We didn't even walk in the room. And you know what the damn thing, whether the system is good or not, because you hear the matrix. You know, it's like, I believe, add in measurements. I think, and it's one of these things that really bugs me all the time, this emphasis on the frequency domain. I'm like, are you kidding me? How many speakers has John Atkinson measured in his lifetime? You could show me all those measurements. I could, you know, which one of those speakers lasted? Which, you know, there's no I don't see any connection between frequency response and anything meaningful that I've had to deal with audio components since the 60s. I mean, frequency response, what? And I probably said it the last time I saw you guys, but it always pisses me off. I wrote this review of a Tannoy loudspeaker. And the Tannoy loudspeaker, in my opinion, was slightly boring, but it was really good. And I put it on a bookshelf. And in the review, I said, I listened to it on my bookshelf. It was the best speaker. And I compared it to a Dyno Audio speaker that I use as my bookshelf. I listened to it on a desk. And then I listened to it at a certain position from the wall, and I wrote in great detail about how it sounded in those positions. John measured it, and I mentioned in the review, oh, and it has a little bump at 2.2K that I estimated at 4 dB. John said it was 5 dB. And that bump, I believe, is what made it sound really good on the bookshelf or on my desk. But Brent Butterworth writes an article saying, you know, this is insane. This speaker should be disqualified. It's a narrow bump. And I remember sitting to close it out. I mean, don't get me started on this one. I remember sitting next to Harry Weisfeld when I first started. And I said, so Harry, what's the secret of a great audio system? And he looked at me, and everyone was drunk at the table. He goes, 3 dBs at 2K. I mean, you hear a matrix. You don't hear, I mean, if the person who has the best high frequency response is the best reviewer.
Then obviously my dog should be writing the reviews.
Right. My girlfriend has infinitely better hearing than I do. I mean, I sometimes can't tell, you know, the water's running in the other room. I can find that spot. By the way, I've had my ears, Steve and I get our ears measured all the time by the best. And it, you know, so it's something old altar cockers talk about on the phone. It's not something relevant to listening to music.
I agree. I really do. Especially now that I'm old. I definitely agree. When I was young, I would tell you you're full of shit, but I'm not, you know.
That's great. You know, somebody posed a question saying, Jason and Michael, you both have Wilson speakers and you're driving them with solid state amplifiers. Can you talk a little bit about, and Herb, you can chime in on this too. In fact, you could go first if you'd like, rather than waiting for them to go. Can you chime in a little bit about the presentation of your systems, and are there any shortcomings in your systems that you'd like to address?
Oh, yeah, I could, but Herb, you go first. I could certainly address that one.
Yeah, mine's short. It's funny. I should start by saying, right this minute, before you guys went on, or before I came here, I was listening to a $999 2-watt amplifier that's been in production for 25 years, driving a pair of $500 is the going rate on the internet, Klipsch RP600 speakers. And I was like, I'm not joking. I swear I was hearing things from piano recordings that I know is on those recordings that I hadn't heard in other places. And I'm constantly, my systems are small. My room isn't as small as it measures because it runs out into 3 other rooms and it has big halls. And it's very excessively, if anything, dispersive. But I think, this is where probably Michael and I, the reason I want to go to Michael's house is so we can talk about the differences between low price systems and high price systems. Keeping in mind, I've sold $1 million systems in some quantities, and I've listened to some of the best systems in the world, as I know Michael has too. And again, that's where you get the matrix. If you hear enough really exotic systems, and there's systems that you walk in the room and you go, oh, fuck, that's it. You hear those, oh, fuck, that's it systems, that you remember it. It's imprinted on your brain. The next time you hear something that's almost it, you go, oh, shit, that's pretty damn good.
Right.
That's my theory on that question.
Well, right now I have, this is so unlikely, but I have the Wilson XVXs here for review.
Oh,
And
great.
I didn't think they'd work in the room. My room's not that big. It's about 15 wide, about 20 long, and it's filled with records and stuff. And last time Peter McGrath was up here, he said, oh, they'll work better than your Alex's because the drivers can be each individually articulated, and whereas the Alex's, only some of them can be. And when it's done, it'll well, my wife came down, sat and played a record for her, and she said, I don't care what you have to do, you have to have those. You have to buy those. And I've got the money, and I probably will have to buy them because, I mean, Ken McAuliffe came downstairs, and when I played him Who's Next, he said, it's changed his life. Did he tell you that, Herb?
Yes, he did. He did.
Yeah, and I'm not in New York, but Danny Kaye, I wrote Danny Kaye recently, and he said he spent, oops, I'm talking over Michael, sorry.
It's right now, my system is, I thought I was at the point where I'll hear differences, different systems, different equipment will come in and it'll be a little bit this way, a little bit that way. What I'm getting now is insane. And it's the best. That's why I'm tired right now. I've been up till 2 o'clock in the morning every night, just playing things and going, what? These speakers are just, and it's good for the Mavlas that the directed disc that came out is sold out now. Classical, spectacular, and rock and roll sounds spectacular. Small quartet music sounds spectacular. It's amazing. So right now, I see no shortcomings. Although I think if I had the same speakers in a big space, I'd have a different presentation. That would be, my friend Jacob's got the Whams in a beautiful room, and that's a whole different presentation of you're in the club. Mine is more like you're in the front row, and the club is pushed out of their way, but you're in the front row, and it's amazing. I'm having the best time ever listening to audio right now.
Peter McGrath said to me, when Mikey gets the XVX, he's going to want to buy them. He kind of knew that would happen. And Danny Kaye told me he's had XVX for probably at this point, it would be 5 months. And he said he's still busy wrapping his mind around them because he's just hearing so much. So I just want to validate that. I mean, my system has shortcomings. Larry heard it recently, and I've made some changes, and I've reached the point after years and that I'm realizing that I need to do some work on my room. And my problem is I just don't have the money for the room treatment I need. I wish I knew an acoustician who lived nearby, who was reliable and really knew their stuff. And I knew a source for low cost room treatment. And I think that like all of those records that Mikey has are doing something that my walls aren't. So I actually resolved before I got on the Zoom call that what I'm going to do later, besides some things on these desktop speakers that I'm reviewing, is I'm going to see if by myself I can move my couch back, tilt it back, and move my carpet to have even less reflection off the floor, and see if that does anything. But I think I'm going to need to just find a way to spend some money and put some diffusers on the ceiling. Meanwhile, I do all of these, other things like tweaks and stuff. And I just have to say, in terms of supports, every support that I've used has a different sound. And some of them have pluses and minuses. And it's a bit the same as when you're reviewing audio equipment and you go, oh, I love this and this and this and this and this about this amplifier, but I only wish that it had this, that I heard from that one. So it's very, very interesting. My presentation can completely change, really radically change in terms of air, how far back the sound system, the sound stage is set, the sense of soundstage boundaries and depth, simply by changing one set of supports. That's how finely tuned it is. And it's a little sobering to discover that. And then I have to, because when Michael was talking before about, well, but it's not that good for a reviewer. So if I weren't a reviewer, I would set my system up one way. For example, I was going to try isoacoustic Gaia feet on my progression amplifiers. Hold on my progression amplifiers. And then I realized, but wait a second, they screw on, the screws have a certain size. And when I bring in other amplifiers, it isn't fair if they make a big difference, which I'm sure they will, unless I can take the feet off those other amplifiers, like the rubber feet, and then screw on the Gaias. And then I went, but I don't have permission to every amplifier that comes in here to take off their rubber feet and, and put on something else. And so I said, I can't use these.
You don't do, well, you should not modify the equipment that comes into the house. That's
right. That's what I'm saying. There's Michael, let me, that's what I said. That's what I said. So I realized I can't use these Gaias. So a lot of the things I do as a reviewer, I'm, Steve, like readers will never know. If I cheat and I don't tell you in my review, you'll never know that I've cheated. But I think that one of the things that, and Herb got a laugh out of that, but I think that one of the things that's important to me as a writer is that I have to live with myself. And I have a responsibility to people who read my stuff. So I can't cheat to get one thing to sound better than the other. I have to treat all things equally. And that has a lot to do with what how I approach things. So there's part of my answer. And I have some reflections in my room and I find ways to work around them, but they've been a constant source of frustration ever since I built the room.
Jason, I'll send you some links for acoustic treatments that are affordable and very effective after this meeting.
That would be great, because my friend Peter Schwartzman just bought some styrofoam stuff, and it actually, his room sounds good, but I don't know if it's the styrofoam or the fact that he took the heavy black drapes and he opened them up and put the styrofoam instead. But please, please, please send me those links. Thank you.
Actually, send them to Leslie too and get them posted.
I will do that.
Well, that's one of the conundrums, Jason, about your system. Once you own a piece of equipment and it's your reference, I think you're free to do whatever you want to it to make it sound better. It's just that when some piece of equipment comes in to be reviewed, you have to review it as it shows up. That's just part of the deal. And you don't compare it to your own, what you have. The idea is to talk about what it sounds like as best as you can figure out what it sounds like, as opposed to comparing it to what you own. I mean,
Right. I agree. I went a little off balance in one of my reviews where I kept on comparing it to my reference system. I mean, but I think we probably have all, Herb, Mikey, you've all had experiences where we get a piece of equipment and we just can't wait to get it out of our system. Have you had that kind of experience?
live with it. And if it's a speaker, then you're really stuck, because you're stuck for a couple of months. And then how do you review something else in your system? Like if I am reviewing for Analog Planet, how can I review something for my website when the speakers that are in my system are just unlistenable? But that doesn't happen often, because I try to only review things that I think I would like. I'm not looking to write negative reviews. I just don't.
Unfortunately, where I am, I can't always tell. I don't always know how something will sound. And so it is a bit of a crapshoot. And, you know, I review recordings and I want to say something about sound quality. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know how the fuck I can say anything about sound quality given this piece of gear that I'm reviewing. And so then I find myself going back to my reference and then back and forth. And, you know, in that period we're reviewing, I don't think readers know sometimes how much work we're doing to finally get to the review.
And that's a bitch.
Say it again, Michael.
Packing and unpacking is a bitch.
Yeah.
And shipping and.
Yes.
You want to talk about what you're listening to right now? Any new music you suggest? What are your favorites right now?
Jazz at the Pawn Shop.
Okay.
I'll go
Night on Bald Mountain.
Records. I'll do a show and tell, okay? Because that's better than talking. I'll be right back.
I actually, what I've been doing lately is I've been mostly reviewing vocal recordings like Leader and opera for San Francisco Classical Voice. And I haven't been doing much vocal stuff in Stereophile. So I swore I was going to do a vocal review. And it's been actually very frustrating for me to read. I discover, oh my God, that got a, you know, editor's choice, that got a record of the month in BBC Music Magazine or in Gramophone. Oh, I've got to listen to that. And I put it on and I go, are you kidding? So some of my listening experiences lately have actually been quite frustrating. And, you know, I remember when I reviewed a Jonas Kaufmann, a new Jonas Kaufmann recording of Leader. And I reviewed it for San Francisco Classical Voice. And I dared to compare some of Jonas Kaufmann's performances with recordings from singers who are no longer alive. And I got 2 angry letters at Stereophile. At San Francisco Classical Voice, and they almost said what one person said about 2 years ago. And they said, this is an example of a critic who knows too much. And I think Michael really understands this one. And it's a real problem where your level of discrimination is such that you realize what some people and some pieces of equipment really are great. And I think that, you know, all of us have been very fortunate to have been around long enough and have good enough powers of discrimination that we've put together really, really good equipment. But one thing I've just reviewed for Stereophile that is very interesting is the Gray Land. It's not perfect, and in my 300 words, I didn't have time to talk about its imperfections, but it's a music, video, sound collage, mono opera, which means it combines monologue and opera. and it's dealing with the subjects of racism and class in the United States. It's by Joseph C. Phillips, and it's quite powerful. So that's something I would recommend. Another thing I would really recommend that I did not review for Stereophile, but I talk about in my opera and art song piece that's in the current issue, is Ellen Reed's Prism. The libretto is absolutely brilliant. It's about sexual abuse. Some critics, I read one critic who couldn't figure out what the libretto was about because it's so good. But I've listened to it twice, and the second time was more powerful than the first. And it is just, the music is, the story is one thing, but the music is so absolutely gripping. And I mean, I have not experienced sexual abuse, but when you get through this thing, you have some kind of visceral experience of what sexual abuse is about.
And that's what people want?
What?
And that's,
Well, you know, I mean, can I be perfectly honest? You know, there are people who all they want to do is have music as a distraction, and they want to use music as an escape. And I've never wanted to escape. I mean, when I went to Munich High End with my husband, David, we went to Dachau. I didn't want to escape. I wanted to experience it more. And I feel that the greatest music that we all listen to is music that tells us more about the truth of the human experience. So if that's, you know, I understand that. And I don't know your personal history, Leslie, and I don't know if this, you know, if this, no, I'm not making fun at all. I'll be deadly serious. I don't know if the, you know, watching an opera about sexual abuse, if this triggers stuff for you, but, and I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I think it's interesting that you would choose that, but those are both very interesting choices. I tried to look up the first one. I couldn't find it. So if you want to just shoot, type and shoot the names of it to everyone. So
how do I do that?
Oh, under the chat, you can just.
Okay, great.
Yeah, all of you guys, the same thing. If you want to just chat and send
I think Joseph Phillips' recording, let me see the date. It may be coming out in a few days or something like that. I think it just came out. So I will now chat and tell you.
Yeah, just chat to everyone and then we'll see. Okay.
And you can save the chat before we all log off. There's a little 3-dot thing at the bottom and you just go save chat so that you can review it after we've finished with the session and look at the links.
Great.
Okay, Michael, you've got your pile of records there.
The one I could not find someplace is Greg August, who's a bass player from New York who did a jazz record. He took the Emmett Till tragedy and set it to music, believe it or not. And I'm sure most of you know who Emmett Till is. He was hung, a 15-year-old kid who was hung in the South in the 50s for whistling at a white woman. And he turned it into a jazz piece. That's absolutely, I reviewed it. It's highly recommended. You can find that on my website, but I couldn't find that one. But I just took a bunch of things that I'm listening to. So this is Jimmy Heath's final record. He passed away shortly after recording this. And this is a sealed copy. I have an open copy too. And this is so wonderful. He was 90 something years old when he made this, and he doesn't sound like a 90-year-old guy. And I'm going to open this copy too because I figured who's playing on it. Look, I'll tell you who's playing on it. It's just very melodic and wonderful. Yeah, and it's good recording too. I'm going to open my second copy because the other one I don't know where it is. Who's playing on this rhythm?
What's the title again, Michael?
This Jimmy Heath Love Letter. And my friend Gary Gaten is a jazz critic who wrote the liner notes. Katie Barron's on this, Louis Nash, Russell Malone, Wynton Marsalis, Cecile McLaurin, Sal Van sings one song on it. Clear Sound. So, you know, Clear Sound, that's one of the great recording studios in New York. Old tube stuff. Really, really nice. This is Spiritualized. ladies and gentlemen, we are floating in space. This is a Vinyl Me Please reissue. It's the first good reissue of this. It's a 1997 space rock group. You can stream this on Kobus if you want, and it's really shoegazy, dreamy, great recording, really fun. And this whole thing is made to look like a drug. The guy had a big drug problems. It's made to look like what is spiritualized used for? Spiritualized used to treat the heart and the soul. Really nice package. Vinyl Me Please is doing great stuff now, cut from master tapes, and they really have upped their game. It's $50 record. I paid $50 gladly for it. This is a great old contemporary if you can find it. Music to listen to Red Norvo by, and I found it on Discogs. It was about 35 bucks. Really, really great contemporary, sonically spectacular, and just, Red Norvo. It's not like difficult music. It's just fun. He's covering Red Sails by Barney Kessel, and anyway, that's a good one. This is one that Bob Levy talked about with me, and this is the LA and Orange County Audio Society premature on this record. This record here? This is Yuka Mabuchi, who's a very talented young pianist, and she plays Miles Davis. She's a pianist. That's a difficult job, to play Miles Davis on the piano.
Oh yeah.
Tribute kind of thing. And there's a trumpeter on here who's very talented, and he's got the hardest job of all because he can't play like Miles Davis. He can't. In the context of her being the main musician, he just got to sit in the background and do filth. But this is a spectacular recording. It's one of those C24 single mic jobs, and sonically spectacular and musically fun. And you know what else I didn't bring out? It's the New Orleans 4 records that were put out by Nouvelle. I just reviewed that. I really recommend those. It's it's $200 for 4 records. It's Irma Thomas. It's Ellis Marsalis's final recording. He recorded this record for them and died of COVID shortly afterwards. So it's his final record. And then there were 2. There's a little Freddie King, who's a blues guy. He did a record. And also this John Cleary, who's a white guy from London who fell in love with New Orleans and moved there. And now he's got the New Orleans soul in him. And these were all recorded at a church in New Orleans that was destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. And then this guy bought the place and turned it into a fantastic recording studio. So it's a beautiful church environment. And all 4 of these records were done there. And they're not going to be available in any other format other than on vinyl. Yes, they're digital recordings, but they sound phenomenally good. And Irma Thomas's record is a knockout. So I highly recommend that. I bought it. They sent me test pressings, but I bought it. This is a Tone Poet series, Herbie Hancock. I'm about to review this. It's got Hank Mobley, Donald Byrd, Grant Green, Chuck Israels, and Tony Williams on drums. It's his Herbie Hancock's second record for Blue Note. It's fantastic. And it's part of the Tone Poet series, so it's not extremely costly, and it sounds great. That's good. This is one that Chad put out that's really quite amazing. It's mono, obviously. It's Muddy Waters, complete plantation recordings. It's a field recording, and I'm not sure whether it was Alan Lomax or who did it, but I went down there and got from the Library of Congress the metal parts and pressed up this record. There's an interview with Muddy Waters and when he was a young man, and it's, aside from the interview, musically it's phenomenal. So 1941, it was Alan Lomax, recorded on Stovall's plantation in north of Clarksdale, Mississippi. And sonically, it's actually quite good, surprisingly good, because Alan Lomax recorded it direct to disc in 1941, and it's beautiful presentation. It's one of the things that Chad does that's outside of the commercial purview, but he put this out, and I bought this too. I didn't get Chad to send it to me. It's beautifully presented, and it's an artifact that you will want to hand down to future generations. Taylor Swift's new record, it's really, really good. Don't laugh. It's really good. I'm telling you. it's in the Joni Mitchell category of how can I say this? It's like you're sitting in and reading her diary of her. It's like Joni Mitchell's Blue in a lot of ways. And
What's the title, Michael?
I have no idea. It's called Folklore. It's well recorded too. And there's one track on this that's not on any other version except the vinyl version. Well pressed. And Aaron Dester from The National was one of the co-writers with her, if you know that group. If you don't know that group, then you're not hip at all. And Jack Antonoff is on this. And Jack Antonoff grew up down the block from me. So do you know that the Jonas Brothers grew up in a house around the corner from where I live? And when we moved in here in 1999, the Jonas Brothers were not famous yet, but the church that abuts our property, the parking lot, is where their father was the pastor. And so we moved in, and these kids set up their guitars and their whole amplifiers in the parking lot behind our house and started wailing. And my wife was so pissed off about this. She ran out there and she said, "Would you kids turn that down? You suck." And they were the Jonas Brothers. So I said to my wife, this is like in Liverpool, if the Beatles were playing when they were kids, and the lady said, "You kids will never amount to anything. Turn that crap off." And then my wife met Nick Jonas at a benefit concert for the AKC or something like that, and told him the story, and it's very funny. Okay, the Tom Petty box. This is the big box. This is with everything, all 9 records. This, the Wildflowers was Tom Petty's autobiographical record, and it became his most successful, and it's been successful again when it came out in this box. You can buy the 3-record set. You can buy the full box that has everything. It's one of the first like multiple record box sets with all kinds of additive stuff where everything on here is phenomenal. The live concert stuff is phenomenal. The demos that were used to produce the Wildflowers record are really worth hearing. And I was lucky with this. I was the first person in the world to get this box, which was exciting because Rick Rubin asked me if I would listen to the test pressings. He said, "Listen, you're the only person in North America with a turntable," because he hates records. He says, "So we're going to send you the test pressings. You go through all 9 records. And, and if you think listening to test pressings is easy, it's not, because you got to sit there with a stopwatch and listen for pops and clicks. 12 seconds, So I did that. It took me a long time. And then they said, as a bonus, we'll send you the first box and we'll give it to you, and you'll have it for a few weeks before anybody else in the world has it, so you can write about it." That was cool. You can be a geezer and get something like that and go, you know what? This is really cool. So that was cool. And then what else do I have? This is a really interesting Horace Silver album. Everybody knows Horace Silver wrote the opening to Ricky Don't Lose That Number. Not that he wrote it for that, but they stole it from him. So this is a pretty obscure one. It's also on the Tone Poet series. Art Farmer, Cliff Jordan, Horace Silver, Louis Hayes, and Teddy Kotick on bass, who is must be a relative of mine. It's a very unusual name, and my nephew is named Kotick. We married into the Kotick family. So, okay, another great one. The record's on the turntable right now. This is Bobby Hutcherson. This is another Tone Poet Blue Note. It's Joe Henderson, Bobby Hutcherson, Duke Pearson on piano, Bob Cranshaw on bass, and Grant Green on guitar. I don't know what this apparently was never released, or it was released and got pulled off the market, or it's phenomenal. No, this was never released till 1999. I think Michael Kuskina, when he was running Blue Note, put it out on a CD, and then they went back to the original tape. And I'm a nut for vibes, so this record is really, really good. And one more. This is the Electric Recording Company did this one, and this is Ravel Complete Orchestral Works. This apparently is like the greatest version of Ravel's orchestral works. And this set, the sound on, they outdid, ERC does great stuff, but this one they outdid themselves. Herb, I'll play you some of this and you'll pee in your pants from this. If you like classical music, it's absolutely spectacular. And the problem with the ERC release is this is a series of 150 pressings, I think. By the time I get it, it's sold out. And so you can't buy it unless you go on eBay and they sell it for huge amounts over the already huge selling price. So these are among the things I've been listening to and just enjoying the hell out of it.
Oh, thanks. And just so, in case anybody didn't see, so Michael, basically everything you mentioned, Stephen Sharp has been nice enough to put it all in the chat. So you don't have to write it all down. And if everybody's not looking at the chat, take a look. And I think Jason actually added another one as well. Okay.
Yeah, I actually added two things. And one of them I talk about in my in my current review of the Griffin monoblocks, and that's the Reinhold Lieberson's recital from Wigmore Hall. Those, I mean, they're on this is on CD. It's only 1644/1, but the sense of space that they get on those recordings is really, really wonderful. And that woman had a place, you know, had this ability to just go to this spiritual place where nothing exists other than her voice and the actual experience. And she just takes you right there. And for something very different, this is going to be one of my records to die for. Jamie Barton, mezzo-soprano, and Jake Heggie did a recital called Unexpected Shadows. And there are some like very sobering things, like he wrote a piece for the Smithsonian about 4 objects in the Smithsonian. So there's one is the hat that Jackie Kennedy was wearing in Dallas when JFK got shot. There's the mink coat that Marian Anderson wore when she sang on the steps of the Smithsonian. But then there's this cycle that he does with statues, where the statues become alive and they engage in dialogue. And Jamie Barton is this much larger than life personality with this absolutely phenomenal voice. And it is a scream. It is some of the most wonderful, alive, vibrant song I have heard in the art song category. It makes the best case I've ever heard for American song, and it's really well recorded. So I would urge you to get it. I mean, even if you don't like quote unquote classical music, fuck, the stuff is in English. It's totally understandable. It's not, 12-tone music, and it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious to hear. There's one line in there. Who is it? The Winged Victory, and she screams. Jamie Barton screams, and he goes, isn't anyone looking at me? Don't you realize I don't have any arms? It's quite wonderful. Okay.
So Herb,
what have you been listening to?
you're up.
Well, I'm challenged. I can't pronounce most of this stuff. But what I've realized last month, it was hard work. I had to review 2 headphone amplifiers, very expensive ones, and 2 headphones. And so I spent a whole month listening with headphones. And then as soon as that was done, I'm like, out of here. And this month I'm reviewing, really modest stuff. And what I'm realizing is, and I'm sure I can see some hi-fis in the background, my hi-fi changes normally every 3 or 4 days. So I'm not having even the same speakers. I doubt I've had the same speakers in for a week in many years. And so what I've realized is whatever the system is, it's kind of like a dog running on a leash, it sort of pulls me. And so every month I'm sort of dragged in a different direction. When I was doing headphones, I really got into soundtracks because I don't have HBO or Netflix. So I started watching, I did the Chernobyl soundtrack, the soundtrack to the movie The Lighthouse. And that sort of led into, and there it was really fun. I was listening for like Foley sounds, which headphone could I tell what all the Foley sounds were. But at the same time, a good, these soundtracks, they're putting, the people working on them and the composers. I'm going to try to pronounce the person who wrote The Lighthouse, Hildur Gundenatter. Anyhow, you'll find it.
Stotter. I think at the end is probably T-T-I-R.
D-D-T-T-I-R.
Yeah, yeah.
Or D-O-T-T-I-R. Anyhow, the quality of work that went into creating these basically sound collages is really good. And you know what the effect they were after, because movie theaters have this kind of wall to wall, front to back, top to bottom, whereas they resolve like on a grid. And these were really fun. But this month, I'm just falling into like Heidi Pearl and Claire Wilkinson. And like, because I'm listening with 2 watts or 8 watts and with different speakers. And there's where the magic, so wherever the magic is where my listening tends to go. And I mean, never, I don't care if you've got a Jason or Michael system. And obviously they don't limit you so much, but your system, and particularly your amp speakers, I think, or maybe your DAC, but will really influence what music you choose. Your taste is sort of dragged right in with it. And it's profoundly obvious, and I don't want to admit it sometimes. I listen a lot now. Lately, I'm reviewing the new Gold Badge LS35As. And it's like, it's shocking how much they actually drag my brain into a certain kind of aesthetic. So I start choosing from my albums or from Qobuz or Tidal records that kind of work with that. And sort of, make me close my eyes, let out my breath, engage me sort of thing. But I listen more for artists. The Art Ensemble of Chicago has been big. Artur Schnabel has been big. I'm looking at my Qobuz thing here. George Jones has been big. Ralph Stanley has been big. For some reason, Eric Leivsdorf doing Mahler has really grasped me lately. And I mean, the recording quality on some of those is just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Why has Leinsdorf grabbed you in Mahler?
I'm not saying, hey, I'm not going to get into debating which conductor is the best. Leivsdorf grabbed me because there it was on the damn screen, and I clicked it, and it came through sort of clearly, and it engaged me. It's Mahler's first, but never. That's way out of my realm of is comparing, pianists, or I do have very strong feelings about pianists, but with orchestras and conductors,
I met Leinsdorf. I got dragged backstage in London, and I met Eric Leinsdorf, and he looked at me and he decided the thing he wanted to do was tell me a dirty joke. I don't know what that means about me, but that's what he told me, a dirty joke.
I had a friend that told me, and we won't mention his name, but he said he would take me backstage at Carnegie Hall, and he kept saying, the reason you go backstage is to grab ass. And I'm like, oh my Lord. But really? I wouldn't do any of that.
At CBGB is okay, but I don't know about. So this is now out of print, but they have to press more copies of it. So this is a direct-to-disc with the Bamberg Symphony. And Mavlas is a very famous piece of music. You all know it, whether you think you know it, but you know it when you hear it.
The Moldau is part of it.
The Moldau is what everybody knows, which is also what was used, also influenced the original folk piece that it came from was also what was used to do the Israeli national anthem. So one way or another, depending on your religion, you'll know this piece of music. This is a direct-to-disc, minimal miking recording direct by Rainer Mallard from Emil Berliner Studios, and this is among the top 5 best sounding classical recordings I've ever heard. And the conductor is Czech born, and the orchestra originally was from the Czech Republic, was from Czechoslovakia. So it's in their blood, and it's a wonderful performance of it. That if they printed up 1,111 copies for some reason, that's all they pressed, and they're all sold out. But
talking to the label and seeing if they'll press another 500 or so. I mean, they should. The stamper is good for more than 1,100 copies. I got news for you. So they'll do it.
I'll give you one more, which is also a record to die for this year, which is I've been listening to Victoria de Los Angeles again. And I mean, I'm sure that Mikey knows her voice. And Herb, do you know Victoria de Los Angeles as a singer, as a soprano?
I don't know.
Okay. So when she was 73 or 74 years old, Montserrat Caballé canceled in Davies Symphony Hall, and De Los Angeles took her place. I think she was in her 70s. I think she was 73. And everybody went, are you kidding? Spend this money for a 73-year-old singer? So there were lots of empty seats. And I wasn't a critic then, and I was way, way, way up in the top. And she started singing in this huge hall, you know, just woman and piano. And I went, oh my God, when have I ever heard singing like this? And I went, not since the days of the young Victoria de Los Angeles. And then I literally caught myself and went, oh my God. And this is Victoria de Los Angeles. And the thing about this woman is, first, charm. Secondly, absolutely knowing her voice and every single thing it can do. And the third thing is being able to have different voices depending on what she's singing. And, you know, Michael knows this, Herb knows this. This is the identity of a great artist, that when you sing, when you play happy music, you sound happy. But when you play sad music, you sound sad, and your fundamental tone can change. It still sounds like you, but you have that flexibility. And it's incredible with singers how few, like I think one of the reasons that Cecilia Bartoli became so famous is because when she sings something joyful, she actually sounds happy. And most of these people can't. And if you go through a range of music with different emotions with someone like De Los Angeles, it literally, she really can capture the emotions. And it's just such a special experience to be in that space. And that was the whole reason that I was interested in getting a high-end system, so I could get closer to those kinds of artists. So there's another one I would suggest checking out.
Recommend music to make automobiles by, which is a Volkswagen record. I don't recommend it. It's a silly record, but I just also How to Teach Children the Wonders of Sex. This is a really, really useful record.
Hold on a second. Let me bring Guy Lefberg come up here.
Really good record. I'm going to do 100 of the weirdest records in my collection. Those are 2 of them.
Guy Lefberg has been neutered, and he would love to learn about the wonders of sex. So perhaps you could play that for him.
There's a soundtrack to Freedom Land. Anybody know what Freedom Land is? Freedom Land was an amusement park they built in New York. It's where the Co-op City is now. And I think the people that owned the real estate, the Zeckendorf family, and William Zeckendorf has the best Beatles collection I've ever seen in my life, one of the children. They are a big real estate concern in New York, and they decided they were going to build an amusement park in New York to rival Disneyland. They kind of forgot that in the winter they had to close it down. So it didn't do that well. And it was the most ridiculous place. You'd go there and they would do the San Francisco earthquake every hour on the hour, the Chicago fire every hour on the hour. All of America was there, all the disasters throughout America. And anyway, there's another one. What else?
Michael, Michael, quick question. Have you seen the movie Bathtubs Over Broadway?
No, that's on Netflix, right?
Netflix. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It talks about corporate musicals. And these things had real budgets. I mean, they were talking about one that had a budget that was...
Yes, I did see that actually. Now I did see that. Hilarious. It was all of these industrial
things.
Industrial films. I've been looking for those ever since. Have not found one.
Yes, that was a hilarious. I love niches like that. That's
You can find them on eBay. They're not cheap. And you're getting, in some cases, something that you'll maybe listen to once and you're buying it for the weirdness of it.
So another question from one of the members was your reference tube amplifiers.
You mean what we think are reference quality tube amplifiers?
Sure.
I own a music reference RM200 designed by our late friend Roger Majeski, and I think it's a great amplifier that combines the best of tubes and the best of solid state to give you the qualities of both that are really, really good. And it's not expensive. It's not a costly amplifier. So I like, there were some VTLs I reviewed that I really like. The small ones, I don't like their big Siegfried amps, but I like the smaller ones. I forget the model numbers of it. But I've really moved over into that. I think the best solid state amps drive my amps the best, and I don't hear these big huge differences. I think like I just reviewed the Audio Research Phono Rev 3. They've improved it. It was good before, and now when I go back and forth, you can hit it in my solid state Phono preamp. The differences aren't that pronounced anymore. I mean, there are differences, but they're not these huge differences.
Michael, you're still listening to Dart Seal gear by any chance?
Yeah, I bought them, so, and I actually
Okay.
off, so I better be listening to them. And those are great. They're very costly, but they're really, really good.
Yeah, I think they're one of the top 3 solid state manufacturers I've ever heard, along with Technical Brain and another one. But yeah, they're amazing.
And I just wish that they had better representation here. I just wish Jonathan Tin would do a better job of getting them into dealers, but he doesn't. It's too bad because the most fun for me in this job is when I go to a hi-fi show and some guy comes up to me from overseas and he goes, "I read your review of those Dart Seals and I bought them." And you're right. I absolutely think that's always great. Same with the SAT arm. I mean, there was an arm that cost $30,000 when it came out, and I put it in my system. And the first record I played was, "What? This is insane. How can this be?" And then I spent some time to make sure I was right, and I wrote about it. And he sold 70 arms off of that review, and not one person emailed to tell me that they wasted their money. Every single person. I didn't hear from all 70. I heard from about 20 people. And they all said, "I would never have known about that. I wouldn't have tried that. I took a chance. Money's not a problem for me." Obviously, if you're spending that kind of money in a tone arm, it's not a problem. But it's everything you said it was. And I've had that to me makes this worthwhile. You know, I look at this job as helping people to buy stuff. I don't look at it for any reason to prove my worth as a cultural icon or anything else. That's why I try to write a review. So when the review is over, you know what it sounds like. Whether you like my taste or not doesn't even matter. My favorite comments from readers are, "I have totally different taste than you have. I don't like anything you like, but I know when you review something, I know what it sounds like, so I know whether I'll like it." That's the most important thing to me.
I will verify that when I read Michael's reviews, particularly of cartridges, at this point, anything he writes about, I know exactly what he means. You're really good at, we probably wouldn't end up with the same final system, but I know what that cartridge sounds like. I'm guessing you probably know the same when I'm doing it.
Yeah, like the Fuga that I review, the one that Gideon brings in.
Oh, I'm a fan of that cartridge, man.
I have one here. I love it. It's not my favorite cartridge, but I love it. I know why you love it.
I love it.
Gideon was really angry with me when I reviewed his book and gave it a really bad review. He really was pissed off at me. It was a terrible book. So
it's a terrible book.
It's a joke. I mean, it's basically this is the equipment I bring in from Switzerland, and that's the definition of hi-fi. What? Anyway, this is a cool record. This is Pins and Needles, the 25th anniversary edition of the Hit Musical Review, originally produced by the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. November 27th, 1937, redone like 50 years later, and it's Barbara Streisand's first appearance on record. That's one of my 50 weird records. Okay.
Do we have any more questions? Because we've been on for 2 hours.
Yeah, we have about 1 minute left to go. So I don't know if anyone, I think we had one question. I don't know if it was answered because I lost my internet for a few minutes, is where do you go to find your new music? Like how do you find out what you should be listening to?
One of my ways is I get every once in a while a text from Herb Reichert with a screenshot of an album, and he says, you must listen to this. And I eat those things up. And then sometimes it's the crazy thing where I'm listening to something very seriously and I didn't turn off Rune Radio, and it plays something else and I go, oh my God, what is that? So that's another way I do. And then the third thing for me is, because, you know, a lot of it is classical. I mean, I get a ton of stuff that I don't have time to listen to. I get probably 80, sometimes 75 albums a month. And, or it feels like that. And so I have those to go through. And when I have time, I just go, well, let's just see what this is like. And sometimes I'm really pulled in and sometimes I'm not. So those are 3 ways I do it. And then of course, reading Gramophone and BBC Music Magazine, and I go, oh, I never played that. Wow, they say that's great. And then I try to go to that and listen.
It's really, I like, you get all those things sent. I get vinyl sent to me. I have a stack like this of records that came in the last week. That's how much vinyl comes out. And it's, you just, I can't go through all of it now, which is, at one point, every record that came out, I could play. And I was on top of every record. I can't do that anymore. But I find out about stuff, Qobuz and Tidal are just, it's, you know, as a resource, you cannot, I can't overstate it, how great that is to have. And I have my 15-year-old prodigy who's now into Japanese electronic music from the 90s, which I never, if you have Qobuz or Tidal, check out The Long Season by a group called Fishmans. It's Japanese 90s electronic music. There's one piece of music, it runs 30 minutes. It's one piece of music. You have to sit down it's the late night listening experience. I listen to that same track every other night at like whatever I'm finished, 1 o'clock, 1:30. I stream it on Qobuz and it's a half an hour and it's the most interesting thing. I would never know.
Herb, where do you find your music?
I mean, you know, crazy people send me images of records that they're listening to. But yeah, I don't know how I lived without Tidal and Qobuz. I really don't. I mean, and it's like, you know, it is the mythical rabbit hole. You fall down one, it leads to another, it leads to another. I love it. I'm staring at it half of the time I'm listening to you guys. I'm looking at records on Tidal or Qobuz.
Hardcore.
Oh, I'm looking at the ones that are under my favorites at this point.
What I find especially hilarious is when Rune Radio is playing something and I say, that's great. And I discover it's in my own collection and I never played it. And I really enjoy that.
Oh, I do want to turn you guys on to one thing, and I'll have to look. It's called the Trio Modelli. And it's 3 young women in Ukraine, and they sing folk songs from the Ukraine. And they're not like trying to be like sexy, but they're naturally, their faces have power. Let's put it that way. And one plays like a little stringed instrument, and they're always in the same order. And they just do folk songs, but they do their videos, and they're set against different things that you'd never see in Ukraine. And, you know, sometimes they're at a farm, and they're in there with the chickens and the pigs, and they're singing. And they're brilliant. I mean, they're very delightful to look at, but the music is amazing. And I know that for a fact because the amount of people that watch them, and the beauty of it is they're making a good living living on the middle of nowhere and putting videos during COVID on YouTube, and people are like me are watching them. Trio Modeli.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they have very, very little on Tidal and Cobuzz, so it's mainly video on YouTube.
Right. It's mainly, and the video is what sells them. I mean, you know, watching them is almost as good as hearing them.
Okay, and there you have it. There is the final quote. Put that up. Michael, Herb, and Jason were on for 2 hours, and the final quote is, "Watching is almost as good as listening." Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Quote.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming on. We do have to wrap up. You guys are priceless. Keep doing what you're doing. We all love you. And everybody take care.